When we talk about AngularJS and authorization, we need to remember that AngularJS is a client-side program. That means AngularJS runs on the browser. It doesn't run on the server. However, when we use the browser to log into a server to do something, authorization needs to happen on the server. So since authorization happens on the server, yet AngularJS is running on the browser, AngularJS can use what's known as link or view hiding. This is basically hiding a link from the user's view or site so that they can't see the link, but that it's still accessible on the web page. This does not protect the server endpoint and definitely should not be relied upon for security. This implements what we call security through obscurity. That means we make the link obscure or difficult to see, but that doesn't mean it's actually secure because the link is viewable using certain means. So we're going to talk about some wrong assumptions about AngularJS authorization. In this exercise, you will create an AngularJS application that does the following. First, it detects and displays when it has lost network connectivity. We'll also set up an HTML5 application caching. That means you have to define a manifest file. Make sure that that manifest file is defined such that it always loads the AngularJS app script from the network. This application can also store and retrieve a user's first and last name using the Angular Cache library. And finally, it uses JS data Angular models to store the user's age in local storage. So pause the video now, perform the exercise, come back and we'll talk about the solution. The first step to solve this exercise is to modify bower.json with the correct library so that when Grunt builds the application, those libraries are included in index.html. So here's my bower.json file, and the versions of these files may vary, but it'll look more or less like this. So one of the requirements is that we can detect and display when lost network activity. That's the offline library. And in order to demonstrate this in the exercise, we will also do the offline.js simulate UI library. This will allow us to simulate going offline so that we can demonstrate. Another requirement is that we implement some application caching using Angular Cache. So let's include that. And then later we need to use JS data Angular and local storage. And that's these three libraries. So we include these 6 libraries in bower.json, and then we'll just double check our index file, make sure those get loaded. So we've got offline.js, the simulate, Angular Cache, and then the JS data library. So it looks like everything was added correctly. Now the nice thing about the offline.js and the simulator is by simply including those 2 JavaScript libraries, we can then just run over here and test it. So the simulator produces this little checkbox to the left over here. So I'm going to click on that, and that'll simulate going offline, and it'll try to reconnect. And I'll go ahead and unclick, and now we're back online. So that resolves bullet number 1, detect and display when it has lost network activity. Bullet number 2 is set up to use HTML5 caching, defining a manifest file. So that's a 2-step process. Step 1 is to add the manifest equals to the HTML tag in index.html, which we've done here. And notice we're calling this application.appcache. So we'll run over here and look at application.appcache. All these files here will be cached, and the one under the network block, these will always be requested, so these are never cached. The third bullet is set up to always load the AngularJS app script from the network. That's this file here and this file here. So the app.js and the main.js are the 2 JavaScript files that include our application, so those are set up to be downloaded always from the network. So that satisfies requirement number 3 of our exercise. Requirement number 4 is store and retrieve a user's first and last name using Angular cache, and that's done in our main.js file. So the Angular cache library is included in index.html. So to use it, we can grab the cache factory. So the cache factory object is injected into our main controller, and then we have some code which builds the cache if necessary, puts a user's first and last name into the cache, and then gets the user back. So this is going to console mycache.getUser, so it should get this object back and then display it on the console, which it does right here. And finally, the exercise says uses JS data Angular models to store user's age in local storage. So the first thing we need to do is register our local storage adapter to the DS object. And then we're going to define a factory called user, which returns this user-defined resource here. So in order to use this in our application, we need to inject user into our controller. And down below, we can inject an object into the user local storage using JS data. And its ID is 1, its text is JDoe, and JDoe's age is 29. And then we can get the age out by saying user.get1. That should return that object, JDoe29, and ID 1. And then we'll grab the age off of that, and that should console out 29, which is exactly what it does.